When you're stuck in a cycle of worry, it could feel never ending. And even if you've learned some strategies for how to manage the worry and anxiety, it's not always obvious how or when to use those skills. You might know what the tools are, but putting them into practice, especially when you're in the middle of a stressful moment or a bout of worry, it could feel confusing. Are you supposed to challenge the thoughts? Should you be problem solving? Do you sit with the uncertainty? It can feel like you're holding all of these ingredients without knowing the recipe. So in today's video, what I want to do is to walk through a clear framework, a kind of step-by-step plan that brings together all of the skills that we've talked about in worry management into something that's really practical and usable. It's not about doing everything perfectly, but it's about knowing what tool to reach for and when. And so in doing so, you can respond to worry in a much more effective way. Now, if you've seen the earlier videos in this series, you know that we started with a simple idea. Worry is like an engine. And then we added complexity to that initial model. We talked about how intolerance of uncertainty acts like the fuel that drives the worry engine. We talked about how certain beliefs about worry can keep that worry engine going. We talked about how poor problem solving and negative problem orientation can make things worse, especially for type 1 worries. And most recently, we looked at type 2 worries, those upsetting what if thoughts about things that are future oriented, that haven't happened, and that may never happen. And we talked about how cognitive avoidance can maintain those types of worry. So, what started out as a pretty simple model for understanding worry has evolved into something a lot more detailed. And along the way, we've talked about a number of tools. We've talked about worry awareness training, categorizing worries as type 1 or type 2, practicing behavioral experiments to increase tolerance of uncertainty. We've challenged worry beliefs. We've addressed negative problem orientation by shifting how people respond and think about problems. We've talked about structured problem solving skills. And for type 2 worries, most recently, we talked about how cognitive exposure can help affect and deal with those types of worries. So you have all of these tools. The question becomes, how do you actually use them all together? And that's where a recipe comes in. And so let's walk through it step by step in terms of how to approach worry management. The very first step, every single time, is worry awareness. You need to recognize that you're worrying and to identify the thought or the scenario that is on your mind, the content of the worry. So once you've identified the worry, the next question is to ask yourself, what kind of worry is this? Is this a type 1 worry, a worry about a real, current, actual problem that's happening right now? Or is it a type 2 worry, a worry about something that hasn't happened yet, that might happen in the future, but may also never happen? So let's start with type 1 worries. Imagine you've identified the worry as a type 1 worry, a problem that you're facing right now. So, for example, say I had a falling out with a close friend and I haven't talked to that friend in a couple of weeks. It's a real problem that's happening to me right now. So, the first thing I should be doing is to look at whether intolerance of uncertainty is making the situation worse. Am I avoiding contacting my friend because I'm unsure how they'll respond? Am I constantly checking with other people for reassurance about what happened or how bad it was? These types of behaviors are things I might be doing to try and eliminate the uncertainty. And this intolerance of uncertainty and this need to eliminate uncertainty often feeds the worry. So here's an opportunity for me to start practicing tolerating uncertainty. Maybe it means sending my friend a text, even if I'm unsure of how they'll respond. Or maybe I'll stop checking in with others about the situation and seeking their advice or input. So once I've addressed the uncertainty and worked on tolerating my uncertainty in this situation, the next step is for me to look at my worry beliefs. Maybe I believe that worrying about this situation shows how much I care. Maybe I think that worrying about this demonstrates that I'm a responsible, good friend. Now, that belief might feel true, but it's also important to challenge it. So maybe I ask myself, is it really the worry that shows that I care? Or is it my values and actions that demonstrate that? So once I've challenged that worry belief, now the next thing I want to do is to tackle the negative problem orientation. That means normalizing the problem, reminding myself that conflicts happen in close relationships. I'm not the only person who's gone through something like this. So the idea here is I'm trying to reframe the situation. Instead of seeing it only as a threat, I want to look at the potential opportunity here. Maybe this is a chance to talk honestly with my friend, to resolve the tension, to build a stronger connection with them. And so once I've shifted my mindset, I've addressed the negative problem orientation, now I can actually engage in structured problem solving, identifying the specific issue, defining the goal, and starting to brainstorm solutions. Then evaluating my options, choosing one of those options, making a plan, acting on it, and then following up to see how it went. If the problem's resolved, chances are the worry about the situation will fade as well. So that's the recipe for type 1 worries. Worry awareness, categorizing it as a type 1 worry, looking for opportunities to tolerate uncertainty, challenging worry beliefs that might be fueling the worry, uh, addressing my negative problem orientation about the problem, and then engaging in problem solving to actually address the problem. So that's type 1 worries. What about type 2 worries? These are those what if worries about the future, things that haven't happened yet. Serious illness, financial collapse, disaster scenarios that live entirely in my imagination. So the beginning of the process is the exact same as for type 1 worries. I become aware of the worry, and now I've identified it as a type 2 worry. Then the next thing I want to do, just like with type 1 worries, is ask, what am I doing here that's intolerant of uncertainty? So imagine I've booked a vacation to a really tropical island, a warm weather place, but then I start worrying that it's going to rain the entire time I'm there. I find myself checking the weather forecast every day. I'm looking at long term climate data. I plan rainy day activities just in case. And all of this is driven by the desire to eliminate uncertainty that the vacation is going to be a disaster if I haven't planned for this rain. So the first step here in terms of tolerating uncertainty is to stop doing those things. Allow the uncertainty to be there, let go of that need to check, prepare, or seek reassurance. That's me tolerating uncertainty and changing how I approach this situation. And once I've done that, just like with type 1 worries, I want to take a look at the worry beliefs that might be playing a role here. Maybe I believe that worrying about this now will soften the blow if the vacation if it doesn't end up being what I wanted it to be, if it gets washed out by rain. But I want to challenge that worry belief. Does worry really prepare me, or is it just making me miserable in advance of something that may never happen? So all of those steps are the same as how we approach type 1 worries. Now, at this point, this is where the approach to type 2 worries shifts. For type 2 worries, instead of engaging in challenging negative problem orientation and problem solving, the idea is I do cognitive exposure. What that means is I write out a detailed, emotionally vivid script, imagining all of the worst case scenarios. I write it out like it's happening to me using first person present tense. I include all of the thoughts, the feelings, the sights, the sounds, everything to pull as much emotion out of that worry as possible. And then I read it over and over and over and over again, tracking my distress every time I read it and seeing what happens to that distress over time. At first, it's really uncomfortable and upsetting, but with repetition, the emotional intensity of that worry starts to fade. I'm draining the emotional power from the worry so that it no longer feels so overwhelming when it comes up. So that's how you deal with type 2 worries. Now, one of the things that people often get concerned about is what if I mislabel the worry? What if I think it's a type 2 worry when really it's a type 1 worry, or vice versa? Well, the nice thing is that's not actually a big deal. The process is self correcting. So imagine you misclassify a type 1 worry as a type 2 worry. So you go through the steps. You identify the worry, you tolerate uncertainty, you challenge your worry beliefs. Those are all things you would do regardless of the worry. But then you start working on a cognitive exposure script. But what ends up happening is pretty early on, you realize that the worry is about something you can actually do something about. And as you're starting to do the cognitive exposure to this problem, cognitive exposure doesn't really make any sense anymore. And it becomes a cue that, oh, hold on a second here. This doesn't have to happen. There's something I can do about it. Ah, if there's something I can do about it, then it's not a type 2 worry. It's probably a type 1 worry. And that cue, that recognition, then allows me to shift into problem solving. Now imagine the reverse. It's actually a type 2 worry, but I label it as a type 1 worry. And I start problem solving this worry that hasn't happened yet. Well, I'm going to recognize pretty early on there's no actual problem to solve because the problem doesn't exist yet. And once I recognize that, that's my sign that this is actually a type 2 worry. And so in that case, instead of engaging in problem solving, I shift to the cognitive exposure. So either way, the initial steps, the awareness, the tolerating uncertainty, the challenging of the worry beliefs, those are all the same. So no time is wasted there. It's only when it comes to either problem solving or cognitive exposure where things shift. So that's how all of these tools come together. This isn't just a scattered list of techniques, it's actually a sequence, a recipe. And when you apply these skills in this order, you give yourself the best chance of managing the worry effectively. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to get the classification right every single time. The idea is just take your best guess as to, is this a type 1 worry? Is this a type 2 worry? And just go from there. The tools then will guide you in terms of whether you're on the right track or not. And if you're interested in learning ways of managing complex worries, which are worries that are a bit of a mix of type 1 and a bit of type 2, I'll put a link to the next video in this series here once it's been posted. So that's all for today's video. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.